Hi, I'm Chris McChesney. I am the lead author and global practice leader for the 4 Disciplines of Execution, which is a practice that's part of Franklin Covey, the Franklin Covey organization for about 20 years. To our knowledge, the 4 Disciplines of Execution is the best-selling book in the world on strategy execution. And the other thing I could tell you that might be of interest, I've worked with Dr. Stephen Covey's organization, Franklin Covey, for almost 30 years now, and started originally working with Dr. Covey in the beginning. Okay, I don't think you want the 20-minute version, so I'll give you the short version. Think of the disciplines as a set of practices for applying disproportionate energy against a key breakthrough, right? 4 Disciplines of Execution is not intended to be a system for managing everything that you have to do, but instead for executing on a key breakthrough. Discipline 1 is focused on the wildly important, and it's really a thought process around how you define what that critical breakthrough is and translate it from a conceptual idea to a very specific target with a starting line, finish line, and deadline. Okay, that's discipline 1. Discipline 2 is act on the lead measures. This discipline really takes hold close to the work. So when those targets that are defined in discipline 1 get close to the front line, the closer you can get those targets, and the more those targets relate to the work of a specific team, the more effective they are. And discipline 2, act on the lead measure, is about creating measures that are influenceable, directly influenceable by the team, and also predict the outcome that you're looking for with the lag measure, or what we call the wildly important goal, that target that you defined in discipline 1. And so really discipline 1 and discipline 2 together, if you do it right, create a winnable game, right? Discipline 1 is all about defining that key strategic opportunity target. Discipline 2 is all about the bet. What do we need to do? What's the leverage point for achieving the wildly important goal? Discipline 3 is create a compelling scoreboard. And this really starts to impact human behavior. It's the discipline around throwing the game on switch. You're sort of moving from a hypothesis, a bet in discipline 1 and 2, to a tangible, visible game in discipline 3, where I can see the lead, the lag measure, and I know week to week exactly how we're doing in real time. Discipline 4 is create a cadence of accountability. So that is a weekly rhythm that the team engages in, and they make specific commitments against those critical lead measures on the scoreboard. And the nature of those commitments, they're usually, almost always, very important, but not urgent. Okay, and a great way to think about this is putting force against leverage. Okay, so if in the second discipline, those lead measures represented leverage against a wildly important goal, in discipline 4, we're putting force against leverage. So the simplest analogy I could give you is weight loss, right? So I might have a specific target in discipline 1 to go from 210 pounds to 190 pounds by July 1st. That would be discipline 1. Discipline 2 might be a lead measure around exercise and a lead measure around diet, right? I'm going to exercise a certain, I'm going to run a certain number of miles every week. I'm going to reduce my calorie inputs. Discipline 3 would be the way that I'm able to visualize it and see it. And then discipline 4, I'm going to make commitments every week to ensure that those lead measures happen, to ensure that despite all the other distractions of the day job, of everything that's happening around me, that I am going to follow through on those lead indicators. So, what would that look like? All right, well, it's going to rain next week, so I'm going to get a gym membership so that I can make sure I get my miles in, or I'm going to go to the health food store because I need to get those ingredients in order to, do those recipes in order to keep my caloric intake where it needs to be. Okay, so even though the concepts are very simple, it's often quite challenging to apply them to given business problems. But when they are applied, and we've never seen a situation where they can't be applied, it creates fantastic setting for engagement and commitment, and allows a team to maintain focus despite the million urgencies of maintaining the operation. Maintaining the business, the day-to-day, what we call whirlwind, always feels urgent. Your critical priority, that's important, but rarely feels urgent. And that's really what the disciplines are designed to do. They're designed to put energy against those non-urgent critical opportunities. Okay, so I hope there was something in there that you can make work. All right, we'll go to the second one. There's no doubt that the cultural side is incredibly significant when it comes to performance and execution. But just to say cultural is painting with a kind of a broad brush. The way I like to look at this is to sort of divide those things that require intense human engagement, right, from those things that do not. So there's certain things that an organization can do without really needing the hearts and the minds of the people, right? And sometimes we call these stroke of the pen ideas, right? We're gonna partner with another organization. We're gonna reduce our number of SKUs. We're gonna invest in new machinery. There's lots of moves that are made that, as long as everyone's compliant, we're just fine. Where culture really matters is around those objectives that require real human engagement or a change in human behavior. That's where culture makes or breaks execution. And this process that we've been on has been a 20-year journey. And about 5 years in, we started to realize how big the cultural dynamic was. And that if you got the rules for execution down, that there was this wonderful accidental byproduct, and that you also got engagement. We really believe that the fundamental principles necessary to create execution are the identical fundamental principles necessary to create engagement. And the way that feels, because I know it's a little bit of a theoretical sentence I just gave you, but the way it feels is it feels like a winnable game. It feels like my team, and I'm part of a team that's making progress and winning against something that really matters. So just to say culture, that's kind of broad, but when you talk about what does it feel like to win against something that matters, right? That was the specific sort of cultural reaction that we look for in good execution. And you don't apply that to everything. Leaders have to know where are we going to need to apply that disproportionate energy, and where do we need to apply that kind of a treatment. With them. Wow, I wish I had something more profound to say, but it really is leadership. When leaders at key levels of an organization are disciplined and really understand what's required to create results, when they have the humility to listen to their people, to really, in a sense, have respect for the nature of the challenge, and at the same time, along with that humility, when they have the faith to believe that even if they don't have all the answers right now, that if they stay on track, if they stay on course, that they will get there. And that sort of fierce human leadership determination, along with the ability to pivot and stay open, there's a certain type of leader we start to look for. And we know when we've got one of those leaders that the story's going to end well. And we're pretty good at giving credit where credit deserved. And with us, it's tends to be those key sort of field general operational leadership positions make a huge difference, both in the businesses in a whole and in the application of the execution principles we work with them on. This one's really interesting. Getting to exponential growth, I do not believe, is the byproduct of setting aggressive goals. I'm sorry, I don't. It's just my experience has shown that that's not been the winning formula. You get too aggressive with goal setting, and it kills this sort of winnable game mentality. People have to believe they're in a winnable game. And so that's not to say that aggressive goals are not important, but at the highest levels, market share, revenue, if that's the title of the book, right, for success that you want, the chapters really make a difference. And when you go from the title of the book down to the specific chapters that are necessary, which of those chapters really represent the bottleneck or the critical opportunity? And it's about putting disproportionate energy against the critical bottlenecks and the critical opportunities, and having the discipline to not just, try and improve everything all at once. That's the trap. That's the fail. And the way that exponential growth typically shows up, and see if this pattern doesn't show up as you look for this, is that there's progress, and then bam, things take off. You hear people talk about the 20-year overnight success, right? Apple is a great indicator of this, right? Everybody knew who Apple was, and they were up and down, through the 90s and the 2000s, right? And then bam, right? And there's a number of organizations you will see that they hit an inflection point and they just go. And the concept that's most helpful for me understanding this is the idea of the irreducible complex. That success is a byproduct of having a whole series of things all working together. And that if you take one piece out, you break, right? It's irreducible. You can't reduce the complex, right? And you have to have all the pieces in order to make the whole. And sometimes for the business, it is that next incremental change that creates the irreducible complex and gives an organization a strategic advantage. The television set's a great example of an irreducible complex. You can't remove 5% of the circuitry of a television set and expect it to work. You won't get 95% of the results by removing 5% of the circuitry, right? So a lot of times it's that last 5%, it's that last key piece, and then the results follow later. And that's, I don't know if that's inspiring or discouraging, but that seems to be what nature shows us exponential growth more often than not looks like. Yeah, I think this is really relevant because there is a huge opportunity, particularly in Latin America. And as I visited with the leaders in Latin America, there is incredible opportunities, but there's also incredible challenges. And, one of the themes of the conference is grit. And I thought that was really interesting. And to me, when I hear that word grit, what that says to me is, look, there's only so much we can do at senior levels, folks. Like there's only so much we can do with the strategic plan. But down at your level, down at the front line, we're going to need innovation in pockets. And, how do we help a hospital get the funding to get the equipment they desperately need? And, how do I get out of the box to do that? And what government agency may I have to work with, or what banking institution, or just, I have to think of my job in completely different ways. I can't think of my job in terms of, well, I got hired to do a job and these are my responsibilities. I have to break away from that. I have to think of my job as getting a result. I mean, that to me, and that's why I love that theme about grit. Peter Drucker, the great management guru, said that the hardest thing to get people to do is to think of their job in terms of results instead of activities. Okay. So if you ask someone what they do in their job, they're more likely to tell you a list of activities, right? Well, I sell this product to these people by doing these things, right? No, right? What's the result, right? We've got, these we've been able to place this many systems in this many hospitals and this many people and were affected and this many lives were changed. And, can I get from thinking about activities to thinking about results? So I think it's a great theme. And I really like where the leaders' head were. There were several of them on the call as we were talking about this opportunity. It's a fascinating discussion. So I do not have a crystal ball, and I'm wrong so often about so many things that I would not ask me this question, but you did ask me this question. I'll tell you what I think. Yes, I think execution is always going to be huge for the very reasons that we talked about, because a lot of problems can't be solved at the macro level. They have to be solved at the micro level, and it requires sort of micro pockets of innovation, and that is execution, right? And yes, I think, I don't know what the disruptors are, but you just, don't hold your breath. There's another one coming around the corner, right? But here's what I will tell you. I'll recommend a TED Talk. Stephen or Daniel, darn it, I just blanked. Help me out on this one. Pinker is the last name. And I think it's Dan Pink, and Steven Pinker, I think is the name. The white curly hair. I can't believe I just blanked on that first name. But anyways, Pinker has this great TED Talk about progress and about how even though life feels so messy and so problematic, if you actually step back, the progress that we continue to make is astonishing. Politicians don't like to talk about it a lot because it doesn't get them elected. It doesn't rally up the base, okay? But the fact is, there's been extraordinary progress made over any time period. You want to take a 30-year period, a 50-year period, a 100-year period, on any kind of education, pollution, war right now compared to 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And then healthcare, wow. So despite the mess, I think it keeps getting better. And I know that's not a bold prediction, but I think it's an important perspective to keep, because things seem pretty crazy from time to time.